Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Happy anniversary, Another View. Today, we are celebrating our first-year anniversary on the radio with the folks who started us on this journey, the Another View Roundtable. In the next hour, we'll talk about the presidential race, the Affordable Health Care Law, how the mere mention of a certain sport leads some to racial commentary, and we'll pay tribute to Senator Yvonne Miller, who is a true fan of this program. Roger Chesley, Bill Thomas, Wil LaVeist, and Carol Pretlow are here to mix it up, and we'll take your calls too. Stay tuned for intelligent conversation from an African-American perspective right after this news from NPR.
Discussing the issues and celebrating the successes of the African American community. This is Another View.
And good afternoon, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Welcome to Another View. My thanks to producer Lisa Godley, who was behind the mic last week while I enjoyed some very much needed time off. It's our anniversary. Can you believe it? We've been on the radio now for a year, and I'm so happy to have our roundtable pundits with me to celebrate. Roger Chesley is a columnist for the Virginian-Pilot, and you can read his columns every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Hey, Roger.
Hello, Barbara. Happy anniversary, y'all.
Thank you. Thank you. Carol Pretlow is a professor of political science at Norfolk State University. Hey, Carol.
Hi, Barbara, and happy anniversary.
Oh, thank you so much for making it happen. Bill Thomas is our resident conservative and community activist, and he's single, ladies. Hey, Bill.
Hey, how are you?
I told you we're going to try to help you out this year, brother.
Brother needs some help.
try to give him an anniversary.
Absolutely.
There we go.
And Wil LaVeist is an author, journalist, and talk show host, and you can hear Will on Hampton University Radio, WHRV-FM on Wednesdays. Hi, Will. How you doing?
I'm doing well. If I could only sing, I'd go, do you know what today is?
I know. Isn't it fabulous, though, that we've been able to bring some great conversations to Hampton Roads for a year now? And what you think?
I'm glad of that. I was worried when we got booted off TV, and I'm glad that we still have this forum, and hopefully folks are getting some things from it instead of hating us.
Yeah, how about that? I also want to say a really special thank you to Leonard Colvin, who is the chief reporter at the New Journal and Guide. They wrote a fabulous article about Another View in the celebration of our one-year anniversary, so we really appreciate that. Shout-outs to you, Leonard. And also to Anthony McSpadden. He's our program director, and he provided we have a beautiful bouquet of fruit from Anthony in honor.
Nice.
It's very
Very
delicious.
good.
And it's very nice, isn't it? So
It very much is.
So let's get to the business at hand. Let's talk about presidential politics. Right now, as we speak, I believe Mr. Obama is here in our backyard in Virginia Beach. Is also going to pay a visit over in Hampton today. And a lot of stuff going on with the presidential race. The NAACP convention was this week. And Mitt Romney, the presumptive Republican nominee, spoke at the NAACP, and there was some booing going on. Let's take a listen first to what happened.
And so to do that, I'm going to eliminate every non-essential, expensive program I can find. That includes Obamacare, and I'm going to work to reform and save. I admit to you this, if you want a president who will make things better in the African American community, you are looking at him. You take a look.
Well, we heard some clapping and we heard some booing. And so what do you think about the reception? Bill, let's start with you.
Oh, I think truth-telling is a good thing. I think he is saying what he says to everybody, every place, and that's good. He doesn't believe in Obamacare. He doesn't believe that government should be able to coerce money from taxpayers to pay for somebody else's health. That's not my responsibility, and that thing needs to be worked out, and it's not a federal government authority to do that. It's just not right, and with his leadership and those who choose to vote for him, that will be undone. So kudos to him.
Supreme Court said it was okay.
The Supreme Court said that black people were 3/4. I mean, don't even go there with me.
No, the Supreme Court did not say that. That's what that was in the Constitution.
The Supreme Court supported it.
The Supreme Court validated it, and a Congress passed it. And for Romney to go against it now, the same thing that he did in Massachusetts, for him to try to run away from it shows how much his party has changed him, not the fact that he really doesn't think it's a good idea.
Well, Carol, I mean, it does seem a little strange that he is as anti. Is it because it's Obamacare, as they call it, as opposed to the Affordable Care Act, or has he changed his mind?
I think it's possible that he changed his mind because, after all, he wanted the nomination for the Republican Party, and if he had stuck with the position he had, it is very likely that he wouldn't get the nomination and he wouldn't be the standard bearer. So that's not a surprise to me. Nor was it a surprise that at any political event, whether it's NAACP or any of them, that you're going to hear cheers and you're going to hear boos. That's part of the process.
But Will, we were talking about the fact that we watched the entire speech,
right,
and that there was a lot of applause for things that Romney said. Also, do you think the media portrayed what happened that day correctly?
Yeah, I think the media gave a disservice to what happened because it blew out the fact of the booing when he mentioned Obamacare, and there was a lot that he said in his speech, and you can see it, the transcript online. You can see the entire speech online and clear in video on YouTube, and he actually said some important things. In fact, he stood up there and acknowledged that racism exists, that inequalities exist, that it's unfair that our society puts predominantly minority, black and Latino children in mediocre schools and expects them to succeed with excellence. He acknowledged these things and said this, and saying that this is a fundamental problem in our country. And so I think it gave a disservice to the NAACP, which for the most part listened to what he had to say. There were people who were upset with his comment about Obamacare and overturning, but who wouldn't be? Because the fact of the matter is, when he mentions quote unquote Obamacare, which is the Affordable Care Act, he doesn't come back and say, this is what I would replace it with. He doesn't come back and address the main problems that are existing in healthcare, which is how are we going to get everyone covered? How are you going to keep costs down? He says, and I don't think that he's changed his mind.
He hasn't.
Romney knows more than anyone else, he has dealt with this issue of healthcare. He understands the ins and outs. He understands that the way to get costs down is that you got to get everyone paying into the system in some way. He knows it, but he's walking a fine line of being a politician. I've said this many times on this show. Politicians are a separate animal. They say what they need to say to get into office and do what they need to do to, establish their legacy or whatever they decide it is. And this is what he's trying to do. He's trying to walk that fine line.
Bill, you shaking your head.
I mean, it's really simple. The state has a right to do what he did in Massachusetts. That's a state issue. I think it's a state issue here. And so the issue with cost, with access to medical services, is cost and access. That's the problem. How can I make what I make and have to pay $890 a month for health insurance, and my receptionist, who probably makes $890 a month, have to pay the same price? That's the problem.
And the reason why you need people in the system to draw down the cost. I just came from a conference in Baltimore. International conference on health. Because you're giving the same misinformation. Just came from an international conference on healthcare in Baltimore, where you had people from all over the Western Hemisphere, different countries, who think we are absolutely out of our minds of the way that we do healthcare in this country. They're like, look, you got to get your people covered. And you have to do it in such a way that everyone has good access to care. Up in Canada, we talk about, the bogeyman, they got to wait all these years. Look, I just had an issue with my daughter who needed to see a neurologist. Guess what? We had to wait. Come on. We come on. Give the people the truth about what is going on. Romney knows better than anyone, but he's walking that same fine line, giving that same misinformation that you're sitting here giving on.
Okay, let Bill finish his point, and then I'll have a question for you, Roger. Go ahead, Bill.
The health and welfare of my family is my responsibility, not the responsibility of the United States government. Now, sure, there are outliers that come up in people's health that I think we should do something with. But mainly, the problem is the source of the things that are making us such a poor health people. What we eat, lack of exercise, diabetes, all these things are manageable. But at the end of the day, it's not government's responsibility to take care of the health, safety, and welfare of my family. It is my responsibility. So I have to figure out how to do all the things, put all the pieces in place to take care of that. And that if I need government help, I need to go down to the local and state government to provide those services. That is the issue I'm talking about. I don't think we should federalize health care. I think it should be a state or local mandate to make those things happen.
When he starts receiving Medicare, let's say if he says the same thing. Because the same people who are getting Medicare
I'm tired of
right
liberals
now,
like you're talking.
that
Roger
are
has
over
something to
65
say.
getting Medicare, are the same ones standing out there saying, take government out of my health care.
Okay,
And they have
hold on,
Medicare, which is a government
let's get
program.
Let me make a few
here.
points about it. First of all, Obamacare derisively stated that as Obamacare, but the Affordable Health Care Act very much patterned. A lot of the tenets were patterned after Romney's plan in Massachusetts, and for him to run away from it now just means, again, if it had been named Bush Care, he wouldn't be running away from it. It's because of who is behind the plan and who's it's named after now. Secondly, a lot of the critiques of the speech suggested there were a lot of blandishments, but African Americans know what the problems are in our country. What we need are solutions. Didn't get much of that from the Republican candidate. And then lastly, he knows when he went to the NAACP, roughly 95% of African Americans who voted last time went for Mr. Obama. This wasn't to try to really draw any NAACP members or African Americans. What it was meant to do is to lay out for his own base and maybe some independents. I'm going to go there and I'm going to make my same pitch. And I credit him for that because some Republican nominees won't go to the NAACP or Urban League national conventions. So give him credit for that, but it wasn't for the people that were sitting there in that audience. It was for a much broader audience.
And I agree with you, Roger. And I think that politically, if you're a political chess player, that was a very smart move because it gained him attention. Some people said it was very courageous for him to do this, and it covered the news for many, many, many hours. What better scenario for a politician? I want my name in the headlines.
I don't know why
people
he should be given credit for being courageous. I think
can I quote what he actually said?
Yeah.
Just to quote what he actually said. If equal opportunity in America were an accomplished fact, then a chronically bad economy would be equally bad for everyone. Instead, it's worse for the African Americans in almost every way. The unemployment rate, the duration of unemployment, average income, so forth, so on, is worse for the black community. He's standing there and saying racism exists. Inequality exists.
Yeah, everybody knows that as
this
well.
Is what hold on. This is a Republican candidate who's trying to navigate the Tea Party, is trying to navigate extreme conservatives, saying that we have a problem with racism. It is not fair. We need to solve this. He's standing there saying that. How is that a conversation for the Tea Party?
Yeah, but
how is that a conversation for the conservatives?
Nobody in that conference hall.
But you just said that
already knew that.
You said that he was talking to the conservatives, not the people in the concert hall.
Well, I said, how is
that a conversation for the people in the concert hall?
I would have liked it if he had talked to the people in that hall and told them, this is how I'm going to make things better for you. This is how I'm going to make discrimination less of a problem.
He said that by pointing out things that he did in Massachusetts. He did say that.
He did say that.
This is my point. He did say that, but all we got was they booed him when he mentioned Obamacare.
I didn't get that from some of the disservice. I didn't get that from some of the articles
read the transcript
about the whole.
That was my point. I just said the press gave him a disservice.
One at a time.
The transcript is there.
He wants to get government out of our lives, minimize the impact of government on people's lives. Let people take care of themselves. That is the message that he has put forth, and that's a good message.
Okay, but Bill, let me ask you this then. Why is it then that the state, you're talking about the state, this becoming a state issue, that the Democrats have put out that they want McDonald to draw down the money from the Fed so that we can figure out what our plan will be for health care for the state of Virginia?
Governor McDonald doesn't want the project to be government-driven. He wants it to be state-driven. So we need to redraw the lines and figure out a way so the state of the Commonwealth of Virginia can provide these services to its citizens. Not from top down, but from bottom up, from the state level.
Well, we're in one of the worst states in the country in terms of Medicaid reimbursements. How is he really trying to help the issue? If that's the help, let's go with the feds. We get a better deal for everybody.
The argument is we're spending too much money. The argument is that nobody guarantees you pure and happy and a health-free life. I don't owe it to you. If you get sick, unfortunately, Roger, I'll do the best I can to help you, but that's not my responsibility. That's yours.
And when he gets Medicare, he's going to say, take your hands off my Medicare.
No.
When McDonald gets Medicare, he's going to say, take my hands off my Medicare.
I am getting...
Medicare is a government health
You know what I would do right now? I would
system.
opt out right now. If the government said they would stop taking that $2,000 a month out of my check for this doggone Medicaid, whatever all this crap is, I would opt out. I'd opt out right now. Well, I don't want it. I don't want it.
But what happens to the people who can't afford it? Who can't afford it?
Excuse me?
What happens to the people who can't afford it?
There were Catholic charities. I mean, have you heard of charities and people that can do things to help people?
The rest of the world does not do it that way.
The rest of the world. I'm in the United States of America.
Do not do it that way.
They're broke too.
And that is such an unchristian statement to make. That you take care. Christianity says you take care of the least of these. Our government is richest government on the planet. We're spending $1 million per troop per year, $100 million on these wars.
It's still not
and we can't do this.
Still not my
Hold on, Roger. Hold on, Roger.
Mr. Giuliani was here, another failed Republican candidate for president, I might add, talking about all the things that Obama is going to hurt the country by, and he's going to hurt military spending. We spend more on our military than so many other countries. I don't know if it's 12, 13, then the next 12 to 13 or whatever the number is combined.
I agree.
And we can't cut the amount of money going to the military. Look, it might hurt this area.
It will hurt
geographically. Isn't that a better thing for this country to consider? Are we spending too much? Shouldn't some more of our allies be paying more of the freight for helping to keep peace abroad? And to make these statements sometimes, I'm like, well, what are you thinking about? If you want to have less federal spending, shouldn't we be looking at one of the biggest drivers of the cost of federal money?
You say yes, Bill?
Absolutely.
$1 million per member of the armed services. 100 million troops over there. Come on, $100 million being spent per year.
Okay, not 100 million.
100,000 troops. I'm sorry. $100 million per year.
There was also some controversy, back to the NAACP convention for just a moment, to the fact that President Obama did not come in person to the convention, and Ben Jealous gave an explanation about that from while he was talking to Bill Press on the Full Court Press.
Are you disappointed President Obama is not coming to the NAACP, and do you think he's just taken the black community for granted?
You know, these sorts of concerns certainly are there with many of our members. With that said, I think most of them realize that the guy who's running for president has one job. The guy who's running the country and running for president has two, and they're generally willing to give him a bye this year as he tries to do those two jobs. And they're pleased to see his vice president coming. They're pleased to see his AG coming. But again, that just speaks to what a missed opportunity Romney had, right? I mean, because he could have stood up there and said, "Look, I'm here. I'll be here each year." These are the things I'm talking to the whole country about, but this is something else that's really important to me that I know is really important to you, and this is how we're going to fix the problem. And he just didn't do that.
I'm sorry, I have to disagree with Mr. Jealous on that one.
Because he answered the question.
He did say, Romney did say, if I am elected president, I will, and you invite me back, I'll be here.
But he didn't deal with the problem. The problem is the NAACP. That's the problem.
How is that the problem?
The NAACP and their lackadaisical, no respect for African-American life or education, and engracing their own pockets and getting rich off the backs of poor people who are making these contributions.
Bill, do you
that
believe,
is the problem.
You think the NAACP is irrelevant?
Irrelevant. Totally irrelevant. Totally irrelevant. We had 3 people shot down in Portsmouth last night. We had 27 murders in Chicago. I just read an old article by Roger, my colleague here, about the lack of outrage of the murder and kids aren't graduating. 90% illegitimacy in families that are being raised. 44 million people are now on welfare from 4 years ago. From 24. They're not dealing with the problems and the core issues that impacts the African American. It's an embarrassment. The NAACP is the problem. They're the problem.
Carol?
I'm amazed that you would say that. And first of all, if they are the problem, how would they not? They address through their members when there are issues on the table. They make statements about them. What is it that you expect them to do? They don't have government resources to say, okay, I'm going to pile some money on this. I'm going to eradicate problems in every community. What is it that you expect them to do?
I think I'm closer to Bill's perspective on this than I am to yours, Carol. I think that for at least a couple of decades now, and I am not an NAACP member and never have been because as a journalist I did not think that was a smart thing to do. I think it has been searching after the most overt forms of racism have been eradicated. I think the organization has searched desperately to try to be relevant. They are not totally irrelevant, but I do think that it is having problems figuring out what is the best course for us to go forward. And quite frankly, I heard one day on NPR this week that they're going to try to make sure that 100,000 people are registered to vote, I think, between now and the elections. And I'm like, boy, that's a really modest why isn't it 1 million? Why isn't it 2 million? And it just makes me think, what is it doing now? How does it really impact the lives of everyday African Americans?
Well, he didn't answer the man's question. And I think the bottom line is President Obama is going to be at the Urban League later this month, and he figured, look, I'm going to do one or the other.
Right.
I'm going to get some of the same people. It's going to be the same speech anyway, same soundbite, to the point of whether they're relevant or not. I think that the whole civil rights movement has sort of lost its way of addressing, okay, after we address these legal, blatant issues, what's next? And what's next should be economic development and empowerment. Mm-hmm. What's next should be dealing with these real issues in terms of crime, in terms of education. We got a lot of schools that are now predominantly black run, and the black children that predominantly attend them are still doing poorly. And that's what the organization should be focused on. But in a lot of ways, they become places of employment, places of, I've come out of college, I've got this legacy, I'm going to move and develop my career and maybe move into politics and so forth and so on. But there are real issues that need to be attacked. Economic development, healthcare, education, crime. Get on it.
Joe Biden did come in the president's place, and I believe we have a clip from him to talk about what happened.
He passed the Affordable Care Act, a goal strived for by presidents starting with Teddy Roosevelt. It required him early on to use up almost all of his political capital. He prevailed where no president had done before. He was right. He was right. It cut $100 billion. $100 billion from the federal debt over the next 10 years, providing access to affordable health care to 30 million Americans, 8 million black Americans who would never have had insurance.
He did start talking about some of the accomplishments of President Obama, and that has been a criticism, Carol, all along in the Obama administration that they have not really marketed or promoted what they've been able to accomplish.
Yeah, and I think their goal was to provide an objective assessment, and sometimes in the effort to strive to be objective, you miss the fine point that you've got to sell to the American public. You've got to put out your best effort and say, this is what we did, and celebrate it. I know it sounds wrong to be boastful, but you need to be boastful in politics, because otherwise it gets ignored. And now he's shaking his head.
Oh, of course, Bill's shaking his head. Go ahead, Bill.
I'm looking at a survey here that 83% of the doctors that are practicing now plan to retire or quit if this thing is put into place. You have the NAACP. They should try to figure out how can we educate our kids so that we can have doctors in our community. St. Paul College lost its accreditation and getting ready to go out of business. I mean, there's all kinds of things that used to be the shoulders that we stood on, and the principles and the merits that we built our lives and families and supported ourselves with have all been eroded away. I think the NAACP, and I agree with President Obama, he should not have gone there. It is irrelevant. I think that the Urban League is a more practical, focused organization. At least they have some kind of tenets of responsibility and leadership there, and we don't have it in our other group. And it's time for us to face the facts that this thing that you're getting ready to put into place, you can't. Kids, go talk to some of the students at Norfolk State that want to go to medical school. They're not going to do it. It costs $80,000, $90,000 to go. Oh, my God. You can't get reimbursed.
So you're saying they're not going because of the Affordable Care Act?
No, they're not going to be doctors. You can be something else other and make more money.
Barbara.
You can be a medical physicist. There's other things that you can do and get paid and compensated for the tremendous amount of resources that it takes. It takes minimally $60,000 a year in debt to become a doctor for 6 years. Then, so you're going to have over $500,000 in debt. The reimbursement rates are now probably 50%. You go to a doctor, look at your Blue Cross Blue Shield or whatever you have. The bill is $1,000. They give the doctor $100. They can't get reimbursed. So it's become a field that you can't get paid for the services and for the amount of effort that you put into it. That's what I'm talking about. And that's why this survey is saying 83% are saying they're going to get out of the business.
Well, Barbara, I'm sorry I don't have a survey in front of me, but if your listeners and if we do the research, you will find that when they instituted Medicare, when they instituted all of that, people were in doctors and professions and people resisted it. They were concerned about what is this going to mean, and I'm going to get out of this, and I'm going to run, and I'm going to go to Canada or something. What the Affordable Care Act, right, is at least, if you do the history and you know what Senator Kennedy was trying to get accomplished, right, it is a compromise, because he realized when he was dealing with Nixon that he should have compromised then and gotten a deal. So he told Obama, get the deal that you can get, and let's continue to move forward. Here's the big problem with the Affordable Care Act that people don't talk about. 20 million people are still not going to be covered. Right. 20 million people are not going to be covered, okay? The only way, and Romney knows this better than anyone, is that you got to get everyone putting some skin in this game to spread out the costs. You've got to take out all of this huge profit margin that these healthcare companies want in here. You've got to stop treating human beings like they're a can of Coca-Cola. We're supposed to be a temple. We're supposed to be in the image of God. We're supposed to be human beings. If your education, which builds your mind, is free, why wouldn't your health care, why wouldn't your taxes go towards paying your health care, which is free? When your house goes on fire, you expect the government to come with fire engines to put that fire out. You're not going to stand there with your garden hose putting your fire. Tax. Right. You pay taxes. That covers it. Exactly. And your health care should be done the same way.
If you're just joining us, we're talking politics with the Another View Roundtable. Virginia-Pilot columnist Roger Chesley, NSU political science professor Carol Pretlow, community activist and conservative Bill Thomas, and author, journalist, and talk show host Wil LaVeist. Let me.
What can I say?
You know what?
Right.
He's
not saying anything now. Right.
There is one comment that we have from Facebook's Tracy Sanford writes, so if the government should not be responsible for health care, Bill,
yes,
should it also then get out of the business of food inspection and prescription drug approval and regulation?
Ooh,
yes.
Good question.
Yes.
So then who protects the citizens?
The marketplace.
The marketplace is only going to do it if there's some profit for it. The government usually does what nobody else is willing to take on. You know, that's part of the problem when I hear the stuff about the marketplace. Often government does something to at least shore up
Roger,
everything else.
We are over-regulated. We are overregulated to the extent that you can't even do business in America. You can't do anything because of a regulation.
Oh my goodness.
And the marketplace is a good filter. If people find out that the Bayer aspirins are no good as killing people, people won't buy them. That's the biggest test in the world.
But who's going to
tell them
ensure that
they pull
gets
those
better?
off the shelves, and who's going to make sure that it gets fixed?
The marketplace. After everybody's died.
The marketplace.
I was going to say, if everybody dies,
the marketplace.
I mean, I'm not saying
you shouldn't use that product. It'll kill you.
There are some things that you have to regulate. You have to regulate, like public water. You want somebody there making sure that our water is clean.
Because
you want to make sure
because of the impact on our health, right?
The public health.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
And there's things that you can pick and choose, but not everything.
So how do you pick and choose?
Well, I would like to know what exactly you want us to get out. You want the government to get out of, because I often hear this stuff about there's too much government, there's too much regulation.
You want to hear it?
But boy, I like the air. Wait a minute, I like the air being clean. I like the water being safe. There was a report on one of the news stations, one of the national news stations this week, that so much antibiotics have been given to chicken that now there's these super bugs in some women that they're having a hard time eradicating. I mean, I want the FDA and I want the Department of Agriculture involved in that. I mean, there's a lot of things. It ain't sexy and it ain't always things that you think about, but thank goodness that they're there. And I want that regulation.
And I think people kind of take it for granted because they don't have to deal with it.
When you see these little chickens that are puffed up, look like little pigs, and you sit there and eat that stuff with all of those chemicals and stuff, that's your fault. I won't eat it. I just won't eat it.
Okay, switching topics. Here we go.
You got to have some kind of common sense.
Bill, let's change topics because I don't want to run out of time, and I want to get to all of our topics here. Article appeared in the Virginian-Pilot in your paper.
Newspaper.
In your paper, Roger. The headline was "Program Hopes to Make a Splash for Black Children." It was written, I believe, in response to the death of the 10-year-old in Virginia Beach a week ago or so.
It might
as
have
a follow-up.
But also the very fact of it is that this program has been around for a while, and it was also having a bit of an inauguration, I think, around time. Jennifer Jiggets wrote the article.
Okay, the program is called Really Awesome People Swimming, or RAPS program, and it is about teaching children, all children, how to swim. But there became a diatribe of commentary on the paper's website, very negative racial commentary, because the feeling was, I guess, that this was only for black children. And then it became a whole issue of why black children don't know how to swim in Hampton Roads. You want to pick up on that?
I'm writing my column for Saturday on this, so you're getting a bit of a preview on this. And I actually viewed the program last year, didn't really think it was a column per se, thought it was more of an article. And nothing done is ever wasted, I guess, because now I can use some of that, some of those details in the column. Let's make it clear, first of all, this program is geared toward Black and Latino children because they have the higher rates of not knowing how to swim and dying. We've had different studies that have been done on this, including from USA Swimming, that has said this. So this woman, who happens to be white, by the way, said, hey, I have something that I can give. I'm a longtime instructor. I see a problem. I'm not going to go to the government, as you say, to do this. Good for her. I'm going to raise the money myself. She makes do with about $80,000 to $85,000 a year. She gets time from different swimming pools. She was at one swimming pool for the first 5 years. She's at a different swimming pool this year. And she said, I'm going to intensely teach these kids, each group that comes in, for 1 week. And I'm going to give them at least the very basics. I'm going to get some instructors who really know what they're doing. And I'm going to try to reach as many students and as many young children as possible. I think it's a great thing. It is not limited to only blacks and Latinos. It's open to all. But obviously,
the focus is on black.
The focus is on them because they are the ones who needed the help most. I think it's a great idea, and I think it's a shame that some people took this in the worst possible light, I think, instead of the best possible light. And it says something about the way we view things, I think, in America.
Bill, you were the one who brought it to our attention. Why do you think people kind of went off on the tangent that they did?
I was somewhat surprised, but not really surprised. And there was a column in your paper maybe 8 years ago about some children over here in Lambert's Point that broke into the ODU swimming pool, and they had drowned. And then they come to find out, I knew about the ODU used to have a summer program where they taught kids how to swim, but they didn't actually teach them how to swim. They talked about swimming. And so they talked about it. So I went down there and retrieved my children and said, no, you need to learn how to swim, not talk about it.
So they didn't put them in the pool and actually
No, they were floating around in water up to their waist, but no, you need to. Then they got all strong, like, I'm going to go in the deep end. You go to the deep end and don't know how to swim, you will drown.
Yes.
So I saw it from that context, but the bigger context was the fact of how the people were addressing the issues, as if the kids, all these little kids, a little cute little black lady, that child that was on the paper, really cute kid, and the way people address that issue to show that there's something sinister in how people look at things and how they look at the human conduct, as my good friend over here, Will, would probably think. But it was very disappointing.
What do you think, Will?
Well, I think that, and I've said this on this show before, that having spent a lot of time in my career dealing with on the internet side in newspapers, is that a lot of people, and you hear it again here first, all of you who are listening who made these posts, a lot of people who post often like that anonymously are cowards. And they are part of a small, screaming minority. The unfortunate thing is that a lot of times decisions inside newsrooms are made by looking at these people make these posts. I used to be a columnist with the Daily Press. I was called all kinds of names on a regular basis by some of the same people, same small minority. And so I think the pilot, and I know this can be done, I know they may have thought about it, shouldn't allow people to post unless they actually have their real names.
Why is that, Roger? Do you know why?
We do that in the newspaper. It's called the letters to the editor. You must submit your name, your address, the whole nine.
Yeah,
and
do you know why?
I know on the editorial page they have since moved to making everybody use actual names if they're going to post on the site. I think that there is some profit motive in it. I think there's also a desire to try to get hits in terms of, you can do better for advertising. But the point that I think myself and others have made is, what does that do to the discourse if all it is ignorance, hatred, few facts? Some of the posters, if they had just gone to the website of the organization, they would have found out some of the information, because some of the comments were, well, I hope none of my government money is going to this. Well, no, it's not your government money. It's a nonprofit that's basically doing things.
I guess the frightening thing is that so many people read those comments and they take that as gospel, as opposed to, as you said, doing more research or reading the article in its entirety, or making a decision.
And let me just say that there was a very good article about this general topic done in Sports Illustrated back on August 23rd, 2010. It's called Giving Kids a Lifeline. And it talks about the work that Olympic champ Cullen Jones has done on this, and we mentioned him in the story. But it's much more space than we had to get into in the newspaper. But if anybody really wants to get a sense of why this issue is so critical, and why it's been a problem. And historically, blacks were not allowed to
segregated
pools, segregated pools, segregated beaches, and we didn't necessarily have all the opportunities to learn how to swim correctly. And if you become a parent and you didn't learn how to swim, you might be very wary of letting your own children in the water. So, yes, that does play into it as well.
Carol?
And I think a lot of it has to do with the public themselves. Unfortunately, people read those things that are salacious and will formulate verbal combat situations, and they're not looking at the facts and let me understand this. They are looking at, what's going to be the hot topic, without understanding all the ramifications of that topic. And those of us who are educators, I think we have the responsibility of beginning or trying to make sure that people understand facts and look at things objectively from both sides, and this is not done.
Okay, Bill, we got a caller who said that the ODU program, you said the ODU program was 80,000, but it's between 8,000 and 8,500.
80,000.
I don't remember that
might
comment,
have been me. That might have been me.
Oh, okay, that was Roger. Okay.
But
no, that was Roger. ODU haters are built
There goes the pilot again. There goes the pilot giving misinformation again.
How much she is raised.
Misinformation from the pilot again.
And I'll double check it, of course.
Okay. All right. Just so we can get to that. Okay, this week we lost a great person from Hampton Roads, Senator Yvonne Miller. She was a personal friend of mine, of Lisa's, of many of all of you all sitting here. But she was a woman who celebrated life, and I have to tell you, every time I saw her, she and I would look at each other and just say, and she'd say, "Hello, gorgeous," and it would just be, she just warm your heart. And we have a tribute to her, and then I want to talk to you all on the other side.
Whether she was educating young minds in her first career as a teacher or speaking out for the disenfranchised, as a lawmaker, Yvonne Miller was always striving to make Hampton Roads a region we could be proud of.
There is no free lunch for transportation, and you can't take it out of the general fund because that's designed to pay for schools, for health care, for other human services that we need. We don't need to rob Peter to pay Paul. We need all the services we have plus more, plus we need money for transportation.
The Edenton, North Carolina native was the first in her family to graduate from high school. Seeing the value in education, she went on to earn her bachelor's, her master's, and her PhD. She taught in Norfolk Public Schools during segregation and later as a professor at Norfolk State University for more than 30 years. In 1984, she was the first African-American woman elected to the House of Delegates, and 4 years later, the first Black woman to serve in the Virginia Senate. Her work was definitely where her heart was, serving on committees like Rehabilitation and Social Services, Commerce and Labor, and Transportation.
We live in a marvelous area where there are a lot of communities, but we can't tie them together. We're trying in Norfolk with the light rail, but it should be all of the 8 city areas so that we could move freely. That would generate a lot of business opportunities, but we aren't willing yet to pay for it.
And she never missed an opportunity to get her point across, utilizing her wonderful sense of humor.
And there is another issue to be raised. If we had a major hurricane and they closed all the tunnels, how would we get out of here? The only route is 460. 460, as it is now constituted, is not a good way to evacuate all the people who would need to get out of Virginia Beach, Norfolk, and Chesapeake. We would just have to say, Lord, here we are. Receive us.
Yvonne Miller left us on July 3rd, a day before her 78th birthday after battling cancer. She'll be remembered as someone who always reached back to pull someone else along, and as a spokesperson for those unable to speak. A shining example of this was seen in her May 2011 appearance on Another View on television, when she addressed the restoring of voting rights of convicted felons after they'd served their time.
It's a way of taking away people's right to participate in the political process by voting for the people who represent them. It is a vicious process because it's almost like there is an epidemic going on where people have made almost all kinds of things felonies so they can strip people of their rights to vote. We are doing an injustice to fellow Virginians who paid their right to society, and we're still punishing them.
Yvonne Miller was utilized as a voice to the voiceless for her ability to stand up to the powerful while never forgetting those she came to Richmond to represent. Her style, passion, and determination will be missed, but not forgotten. For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
She was just a powerful woman who always spoke up. You guys have comments you want to say? Hey, Carol?
I do, because one of the roles that she had was an educator, and I don't think she ever forgot that. Up until the end, whenever we would call, she would come. And my favorite story is a young lady I told her about that had a scholarship to go to VCU, but she was intimidated. And this young lady felt that she wasn't going to cut the mustard. And when we got up to Richmond to the Black Caucus Day, Yvonne Miller said, "Come on, baby. And she said, put that cup down now. I'm going to introduce you to some people. And from that, this child blossomed and became her intern and came back to Norfolk State, and you could see the confidence. And that's my favorite story of her as an educator. She was an educator, activist.
Absolutely. Bill?
I think the most that I remember about her, and she was always open to everybody. Mm-hmm. She always had a kind word. She always openly talked to people, and we had wonderful conversations, and a lot of people didn't understand it. Well, why is she talking to him? And we just always talked to each other about issues because she was broad-minded. She understood that you had to have balance in the community and balance in the state, and you had to work both sides of the aisle and get things done and move your agenda along. But I think the most that I remember about her is just in one generation, she was able to go from a little school in Norfolk to Norfolk State to the highest PhD level. In one generation, that's rare. Just her own generation creating a pathway so that people can do this and then lived a life of integrity. There was nothing you ever heard about Senator Miller that was negative. She always lived a life that she talked about, she walked the walk, and she did it that way. So I will always remember and respect her for keeping those kind of things with us.
Will?
Yeah, she's now an eternal member of Zeta Phi Beta sorority, which is a sister sorority to my fraternity, Phi Beta Sigma. And she certainly exemplified Zeta's emphasis on love of God, final womanhood, education, and service. I was actually scheduled to have her on my show before the year was out. So it just kind of shows you that, you got to get to people when they can. And there's a quick poem, if I could say this quickly, that the Zetas have. It says, final womanhood. Strong, not masculine, feminine, not sedity, aggressive, not abrasive, beautiful, not vain, outspoken but refined, outgoing but sophisticated, loved and envied, respected and admired. Final woman is not for others to understand, it is for us to possess. And I think that clearly exemplifies who she was.
Absolutely. Roger?
Yeah, I had written a column about her last week, and I think the thing that about her, and I spoke about this in the column, was we were actually at a dinner one time, and I hadn't met her before, wasn't exactly sure who she was. She never introduced herself as state senator. She said, Yvonne Miller. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until almost about the time when the bill was over, and we talked, about different things, nothing, crazy, but a lot of things about going on that the speakers were talking about that night. And it wasn't until much later on that somebody came up and addressed her as senator, and I was like, what? I don't know too many politicians who would have done that. And I think she was very down to earth. She was always, she took on issues that I think she knew she was going to lose a lot of times. But she put in the good fight, and she made the point that we should be thinking about these folks who might not have a lot of money to lobby legislators, but they deserve their time too, and they deserve our assistance too here in the General Assembly. And she was very passionate about restoring the rights of felons, making it easier, getting it out of the Constitution. And I hope she wasn't successful, but I hope that that's something that somebody else will
pick
take
up and take on. She taught at PB Young Elementary School in Norfolk, and always went back to PB Young all the time. And one thing that she did was she had a math bowl for the kids, and she would pull money out of her own pocket, 10 100-place winners, 10 $75 second-place winners, 10 $50 third-place winners, and 10 $25 fourth-place winners. So she would pull that money out of her own pocket. In order for that to continue, they're hoping that the community will give. So if you are so interested, they're at any Wells Fargo. You can give at the Senator Yvonne B. Miller Match Scholarship so that program can continue, because she really wanted her kids at PB Young to really understand STEM and those disciplines and to be proficient in those disciplines. And so that's really, really important. So that's at any Wells Fargo in the name of Senator Yvonne B. Miller. I was supposed to have Senator Miller on the show next week. We were talking with the 3 African-American senators. So we will have Mamie Locke and Louise Lucas on the show. And so I'm sure we'll be sharing a lot of stories next week about her also. So you're right, Will. You just never know from day to day. But the last time I saw Senator Miller was at the Community Impact Awards that WHRO does. And I said, "Oh, Senator Miller, it's so good to see you." And she said, "It's better to be seen than viewed." And I loved her sense of humor. So she is viewing us now.
Yes, she is.
And there was notice yesterday, we got about 2 minutes left in the show, that her family has endorsed Kenny Alexander to become the senator to serve out her term. So I'm not quite sure, Roger, maybe you know, how does that process work real quickly?
Well, I think the governor has to set up a special election for that. And it's been no secret that he's been groomed for that seat for some time now, that the understanding, the unwritten understanding was he was going to be in line for that if she ever retired. So it'll be interesting to see just exactly who the competitors will be for that particular, for that district. And the district has a lot of Chesapeake as well. Okay. Chesapeake and Norfolk.
And Norfolk. Okay. So thank you all. Our anniversary show. We're off to year 2. We'll be doing this every second Friday in the month. I hope you guys will continue to hang in there with me. You going to stay with me, Bill?
I'm good.
Oh, we're good.
If we don't kill him.
Thanks you all so much for it, and we'll be right back.
It's our anniversary. Anniversary. It's our anniversary. It's our anniversary.
Great read. Time now for things to view and do in Hampton Roads.
You will be my Saturday love.
You're invited to attend the Engaging Communities in Protecting Our Children, a Call to Action Community Summit on Monday, July 16th at the Virginia Beach Convention Center. Join leaders from the Human and Social Services Departments of Chesapeake, Norfolk, Portsmouth, and Virginia Beach to share information and explore issues about child safety and well-being in Southampton Roads. The summit is from 8:30 until 12:30, and you can find out more by calling 385-3608. Music by the Bay continues at Fort Monroe. It's an opportunity to enjoy the music of area military bands while watching the sunset over the Chesapeake Bay from Fort Monroe's Continental Park. The next concert is Thursday, July 19th, featuring the United States Air Force Blue Aces Popular Music Ensemble. Bring a lawn chair and picnic basket and enjoy the music. For more information, call 251-2752. The Navy College Office hosts a symposium on funding a college education. It's open to all military personnel, retirees, family members, and other base employees. The symposium is Wednesday, July 18th at 11:30 at Naval Station Norfolk, Building 1E. You must call in advance to reserve your seat, 363-3944. The Reverend Al Sharpton joins other community leaders at the Urban League of Hampton Roads Act Now Symposium, also on Wednesday, July 18th. This is at 7 p.m. at Grove Church in Portsmouth. Come find out more about the November election and why it's critical that you vote. And the Hampton Roads 7 Cities Pro-Am, Inc. invites you to a family networking conversation with community leader Dr. Catherine Kersey, early childhood specialist from Old Dominion University. The conversation takes place at Maury High School, Shirley Avenue in Norfolk, on Saturday, July 21st at 1 p.m. Call 646-0497 to find out more. You can find these and other events on our website, anotherviewradio.org. And while you're there, please sign up for our eView newsletter. It's a once-a-week reminder of upcoming programs. Next week, local politics and what's in store for next year's General Assembly with State Senators Louise Lucas and Mamie Locke. And we'd like to say a very special shout out and thank you to Jacob Broncho. He is our intern, and today is his last day. So we appreciate all your help, Jacob. For producer Lisa Godley, audio engineer Perry Smith, Liz Ashley Taylor, who was on the phones, I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Thanks for listening, and let's get together again next Friday at noon for Another View.